Welcome to the Stuff That Growth is Made of. I am excited to introduce you to our guest, Hilary Blair. Hilary is the CEO, lead trainer, facilitator of Articulate, Real and Clear. Hilary and her team keynote, train, coach clients in the corporate and professional world across industries and sectors. Welcome, Hilary.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So glad to have you here. And it was lovely having you in New York City a few weeks ago at my CEO Peer Advisory Group. Your workshop, Activating the Art of Presence, was fun. It was really impactful. And especially, I think we really loved the role plays that really made it come alive.
Did you say that? We loved role play? You said that out loud.
I did. I didn't say I loved it. I loved seeing other people do the role plays. So
That's awesome.
I get very nervous and stop breathing when
Of
someone
course.
asks me.
Totally. Me too. Of course. Yes.
But well, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm glad that our audience has an opportunity to hear some of the pearls of wisdom that you shared with my group.
Great.
What I'd love to do is I'd love to start. Actually, I want to start with two quotes.
Okay.
The first quote you shared. I mean, your background is theater,
Yes.
and I love this quote that I actually got from your book, which is acting is about being real in an imaginary circumstances.
Yes.
Business is about being real in real circumstances, and that's what makes it hard. So,
Yeah.
would love for you to just elaborate
Sure.
on this concept.
When we come from the art world and there are these tools and techniques for, as an actor, how to be present, how to be real, how to be in conversation, how to show up as the character imbued with myself, right? I'm going to be bringing parts of me. There's this sense of like, oh yeah, it's great. And I'm in this character and I'm on stage. And that fourth wall, though, makes it so that I can explore what it means to be vulnerable as that character. And then we have the discussion of vulnerable versus available. But I really get to be vulnerable as that character. And let's say I'm in that scene as an actor with you. We can explore that knowing that one, it's imaginary circumstances, so we can, bail at any point. And that there's that wall between us and the audience. Like there's a fourth wall of our circumstances, our building, our home, our whatever scene we're in, right? Whatever we are, there's a fourth wall. And in real life, having come from that theater world and people are, how do I get people to be real? I go, well, first off, you are under real circumstances. So there are real consequences in every moment, at every interaction, and at each thing that happens. And I think when when we're extrapolating the ideas from the arts world into the real world, we need to go, yeah, these tools are great. And yeah, the big difference is if I am now having a conversation with you, Margaret, about whatever it is, my leadership, my team I just had, the new product we have, that real circumstance means everything is at risk. The risk level is in the moment, true, and anything can switch and change, and you can throw something at me. If I'm an actor and I'm working on what's the risk in this situation, I'm in a scene with Margaret, I get to amp that up on my own and I get to bring that in, always ready to bail and always ready also to say, okay, this isn't working for me, and I can feel safe knowing that I can step out of it. We can't necessarily step out of the real world. So when we say it's easy to be, an actor in the imaginary circumstances and hard sometimes to be a person under real circumstances.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it goes back to that vulnerability. It's
Yes.
about putting yourself out there. You talk about own the awkward,
Yes.
and I love that. And it's like, when you hear it, it's like, yeah. I mean, how many times? I mean, I think there's so many ahas that I've had over the last few years, which I wish I had when I was younger in my career. But
Right.
on the awkward is such a, you don't have to be perfect. And if something gets messed up or you're vulnerable and whatever, then
Yeah.
just put it out there. What's the big deal? Talk about it. It's,
Totally. And it
yeah,
builds trust, right? I was working with a
yeah,
team yesterday on pitching, and they have all these high pressure pitches coming up. And I was explaining, I said, some things are awkward. Just go, okay, super awkward. And then that builds trust that that the person you're pitching to is in the same scenario with you, right?
yeah.
So back to the real circumstances. Margaret, I have to say that it was working with a group of really high powered health professionals who were out in a rural setting, and they were coming back and trying to get coaching on how to communicate their message more effectively. And person after person said, "Ugh, I keep losing my confidence. I keep losing my confidence." And I was like, "Wait a minute, time. Are you losing your confidence, or is this just a really uncomfortable situation?" And they're like, "Well, it's uncomfortable because of the difference in knowledge and what language should we use and all these different things." They just listed all these things that make it uncomfortable. And I said, "Great. So it's uncomfortable. You haven't lost your confidence. Just rock your awkward." And that's where I started saying it because I saw these brilliant people giving away their power by not simply leaning into, okay, this is awkward. So yes,
Yeah,
I relate to it too,
yeah,
right? Is you're
yeah,
still confident and awkward.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yay.
So the other quote I wanted to ask you about,
Yeah.
and again, I have all these things I want to talk about. We only have 20 minutes, so I
Yes.
will
Yeah.
we'll try to get to it. But during, let's see, uh, so one thing that really resonated with me that you talked about was presence is about being in relationship.
Right.
It's active, not a checkbox.
Yes.
And to me, I walked away with that in writing. I'm like, you know what? That's really, that's big. So from your
Yeah.
perspective, would love to get your view on that, and
Yeah.
where did that come from? Why is it so hard for us?
And it came from me working with specifically engineers who I would be brought in and they would say they're not connecting with the client, they don't have any executive presence and all of this idea. And I would be watching them. And what would happen is they would be asked a very technical question and they would leave, right? They would go into their head. I'm old, so I would say into their little filing cabinet. They're right going there, right? And they go into the search. And then because they have often been labeled not having presence and all of that, they didn't have the skill, the wherewithal, the thought to come back again. So they stay slightly disconnected and kind of share their answer in without being in relationship. That's my definition of it. And so what I would say to them, I said, just come back and connect again. Because presence is not about all those little features that we talk about when we so often describe executive presence by the features versus using the features to activate our presence. So the features are the typical things. What are you wearing? What eye contact do you have? What language you're using? Do you have that energy? All those features. And we were in the room and collect, like there's a whole collection, right? And
Yeah.
every group I'm in, different features come up, but they are not executive presence. They are used to be present. And what I was realizing is they are used, how I use eye contact, the language I use is how do I remain in relationship with you? How do I drop the walls so that I'm not putting up the walls to feel safer behind them? I'm dropping the wall, owning the awkward, right? All these concepts are connected, owning the awkward and being present with you so that it is that relationship which is important. And Margaret, what I find is some of my senior leaders, they've been told they're intimidating or they've been told they're too much, right? We have the too much club, the TOO, right? They've been too pushy, too strong, too whatever, all those twos we've been told. And what they do is instead of staying present and in relationship with a direct report, they think, I don't want to intimidate. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I don't want to do any of that. So they put up this wall and they aren't in relationship. They go into this disconnected, and sometimes I say monologue versus dialogue. And they are under the impression that they're doing that because the other person will feel uncomfortable. Truly, though, if we remain present, own our awkward, be uncomfortable, we invite that person into that relationship in that presence instead of assuming we need to take care of them by isolating them, separating them. So if we
So
can think of it, yeah,
yeah, no. So on that point,
yeah,
so there's two pieces to it. So
yeah,
one is, as you said, the leader who's maybe communicating.
yeah,
So what are some ways to be present? You
yeah,
talked about eye
mhm,
contact.
yeah,
And
yep,
then the reverse, when you're in a listening mode
yeah,
more so,
yeah,
what are some of those things to make sure you're staying present too versus
yeah.
multitasking, or your
Oh my
head is,
goodness,
you're
yes.
there but your head is somewhere else.
Totally. Yes. All right. So there are a couple things there. So one, and I make little notes. I'm always making little notes. I
Yeah.
even tell people to show your pen so people know you're making notes. And so one of the ways is to have this double energy, which is I'm going to see you and I'm going to allow you to see me. Words create worlds, so I'm simply using language here. So whatever language works. So if I see you, now here's the thing right now, Margaret, I'm looking at my camera because I'm virtual. So in order for you to feel seen, I'm looking at my camera. I actually want to look at you down here, right? Because you're over
Yeah.
here.
Well, and
But
I'm
I'm
looking
looking
at your eyes, which I'm sure is not in the camera. So
right, exactly, totally.
can't win.
And
Yeah.
I'm trained as an actor, so I'm looking at the
Yeah.
camera, knowing that I'm
Yeah.
connected. So I'm seeing you. I'm also energetically, as weird as it is, knowing that you're seeing me, I'm working on remaining present, open, wall down. I'm seeing you and I'm allowing you to see me. And as weird as that is, it is something that we know how to do because we do it with children. We do it easily with children. We see them and we drop that wall and we allow them to see us. It's an energetic thing that we know. With adults, we think it's professional to keep it up. And when we're listening, so if I'm walking, I'm having a meeting with someone, I'm going to see you and I'm going to allow you to see me and I'm going to receive being seen. We have all this energy going back and forth. One of the ways when listening, one of them is going to be a silly trick. It's going to be a trick, which I don't usually like. I don't like tricks, right? But the idea is how I'm listening to you and you're going on and on quite a bit. And I know I need to listen. I keep my head aligned. I be careful not to tilt because when I tilt, there's a sense that I'm disconnecting my intellect from my heart, right? So we want to remain connected. We do this
Okay.
to
So
often
better
feel like we're
do
connected.
this while you're talking to me because I
Yeah.
am
So
listening.
yeah, totally right. I'm here, right?
Yes.
And then that sense of uh if you disappear a little bit, which happens, I just want you to know that. You disappear, you've left, you're thinking, did I get milk? Can't remember. Do I need to get milk on the way home? Whatever happens,
Right.
right? And if you inhale through your nose, it this is totally an actor trick. You inhale through your nose, it brings you right back to the moment. Not sniffing, that's creepy. We're not sniffing. We're not sniffing the person. But honestly, one of the ways to come back is to inhale through the nose to be present. Because as human beings, everything someone says will send us on journeys. We'll go on journeys. That's just the way it is. And if we honor that and understand that that's going to happen, we can come back with an inhale through our nose, not too weird, like, right? It's just a little, and then we're back and present in the moment. We use that on stage. If I've disappeared, I'm not present in my scene. I inhale. It's a sense that we don't use. The other thing with listening is to remain being seen. I'm here with you. You're sharing something. And here's the thing with leaders leaders are often thinking, I don't have time for this. I need to move forward. I'm in a hurry. It's often a time factor that's moving. So the next tool after the sniff, being present, aligning, is to be transparent. I'm realizing I'm feeling a little impatient because I have the pressure of 2 more meetings. I want to listen to you and I want you. So, how do you share transparently that you know that you're starting to do the weird stuff that shows that you're ready to move on?
So
Or,
again, it's that
yeah,
vulnerability or naming it. You're naming
totally
it.
naming it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Naming it without the because. The because is the key phrase that we remove because the minute we say because, and I'm saying because there, the minute I say because, I I need you to know that I'm feeling impatient because the minute I put because, it becomes your fault and your problem versus saying, I'm impatient. I want to make sure I'm giving you my full attention. Can we finish this in a minute? Or if this needs longer, let's choose a different time on the calendar, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we do it without that because, which is hard to do?
Yeah. It's so interesting. And that's such a good lesson, just to be cognizant of the because how
Right.
many of us feel like, well, we have to explain ourselves. Or sometimes we say, yeah, but I'm listening, but instead of and. I mean, there's
Yes.
just these little nuances, but it really makes such a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. I often say the little things are a big deal, and it's easy to kind of look for those sweeping major things to up our leadership, to move things forward. And in the work that I do, it's these tiny, tiny little things that have huge ramifications. I was working with
Yeah.
leader, and he kept tilting his head when he got to this major important thing that he needed to tell everyone. And he realized it was giving away, it was leaking his power, it was kind of pointing to the fact that he felt uncomfortable. And I said, if you can stay here and give the bad news that you need to give, it's going to show up very differently than, and we need to talk about that, is
Yeah.
very different than, because here I'm remaining present with you. And we all
Yeah.
do. We all do those. Yeah, it's the little things, the tone of voice, the word
So
choice.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's when just to share with the group during
Yeah.
our workshop, we had one of our members go up and she was preparing for giving some news. And she felt like, as a CEO, needed to be very serious and stuff. And you were just on her. You know, her hands were folded like this. No, unfold the hands, do this, do that, do that. And it's these little things that,
Yeah.
again, how do you get that wall to go down? That it's really helpful to have someone with your expertise to um, try to help you be aware of some of these things that are communicating a whole another part that you don't really want to communicate, that you don't mean to communicate. So it's really fascinating.
And we've been told there are so many things that we've had so much information through our lifetime, right? And it's all about communicating. So it's not like new,
Yeah,
right? But as our roles shift and also the world asks for different things too. So there's a need now to build trust and an expectation in the world that we are more available, right? So there is a sense of, there was an old school sense of, it wasn't proper to be that present or that available.
yeah,
We needed more of that wall. And that is not what's needed now. Just like colors change and language changes, how we expect people to show up professionally is shifting. And how do we keep pace with that without losing who we are, our authenticity, and our sense of self,
yeah.
right? How do I still be true to myself? So it's
So
tricky.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is tricky. And on that note, two things come to mind. One is culturally,
Yeah.
there's
Yes.
nuances as
Yes.
well. So it may be okay to be more transparent and show up one way, but
Yeah.
culturally, based on where you are, can make a big difference or who you want to communicate with. The
Yeah.
other thing, though, that comes to mind as you're talking about this is we're on Zoom right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Zoom, ha, any tricks are the wrong thing, but any
No, I'm with you.
strategies
Yeah.
of how to more effectively make a connection on Zoom or more effectively demonstrate that trust factor
Right.
when sometimes when you're looking eye to eye, although I feel like I'm
Right.
looking eye to eye to you, I'm not sure I am, type of thing. I feel
Yeah.
like I am, but so
Right.
any strategies that you
Sure.
can maybe share that we should all be thinking about.
And people's opinions about this shift as well. So the idea of looking into the camera as much as possible is really helpful. It is a little bit different when you're doing a two-person conversation. Like if we weren't recording, I wouldn't be as worried about looking in the camera, right?
Yeah,
But because if it was just you and I chatting, I'd be looking at your box, you'd know I was talking to you, we'd be doing that
yeah,
kind of thing, right? I'd be down here. Because we're being recorded, I'm aware of that. And then the more boxes we have, and whether you're on a webinar, which then the people are watching you, the camera becomes more and more important because that feels like the other person feels like you're looking at them. It feels super weird for me, right? Because I'm looking above you and I can't really see you down here. So that sense of the camera, we will two things. I say dip and dot. So talk to the dot and then dip down. I'm coming
mm.
back. Talk to the dot and dip down. It's bad ice cream, at a baseball game, sorry, but
So the dot
good
is the bright
camera, the
light.
little
Is that
light,
the
yeah, the
idea?
little light,
Okay,
yeah, that
gonna do
little
that
light
right
on the
now.
camera. Yep.
Okay. Oh,
So
sorry.
talk to the dot and dip
Yep.
down. And
So
then some
sorry. Hold
people
on.
say, talk to the camera, listen to the box. So talk to the camera, listen to the box. So that idea of moving up and down, not too much, enough is really helpful. The other is staying as much as possible a third in the box. And some of the classic things we know, being well lit, trying to not be backlit. And because when you're backlit, we can't see people, and having good sound. Those are things that we don't worry about as much, and they really matter. And if we think if we think anything about film, like the annoying films are the ones that don't have good lighting and we can't, the sound is off, right? We're like, wait a minute. So if we know that, then we already know what helps here in the Zoom virtual world. Now, people have a lot of opinions about virtual backdrops. And someone said to me, well, I don't like them because I don't know what you're hiding. And I was like, so you know me well enough, Margaret. I'm going to, I think that that's a slightly privileged point of view because we all are in different places, and I don't know what that person has, where they have to be connecting with me from, right? People
Yeah.
around the globe. Some people are in, their kitchens, their maybe, who knows, what bedrooms, whatever. I had one woman that was working with me, and she said that her son only used the virtual backdrop for the opposite reason of what some of us might think. He had never explained to any of his friends where he lived, and he wanted to be on the same level as them, and he lived in a really, really fancy house. And so wherever he was, he didn't want to show that once we went to being isolated, he wanted to still be like everyone else. So he used a virtual backdrop for that reason. So he was hiding something, right?
Yeah.
And he's hiding something in order to connect, right? So we are hiding things. I'm hiding
Who's
right
us to judge, right? But who is
now.
us
Right.
to
Yes.
judge? Yeah.
So, and I know that it doesn't always work great and earrings go away and all that kind of stuff. I get that. And I understand the idea behind what are you hiding. All of the ideas we toss out like that have a really good sense behind them. They're not misguided concepts. They're concepts that we may need to blow out a little bit. Here's another one that I just had, and I shared this with the group. I think I shared it with your group. I have been a fan of it's important to be on camera as much as possible. I know some of our clients aren't. Stay on camera as much as possible. It has a different connection. When we have a
Oh,
name,
instead
yeah,
of
camera
say turning
off.
off the video. Got it.
Yeah, sorry, let me
Got it.
be clear on that. Yeah,
Yep.
instead of
Yeah.
turning off the video. And like it's hard to connect to a name, it's even harder to connect to a phone number, right? You're like, it's
Yeah.
hard to connect to that. And I had a woman explain to me that that's all well and good for some folks, but for her, her team found it easier. Two reasons. One, to connect when the camera is off because they felt less distracted and they honestly could connect better. Like they could take notes better. They weren't worried about that. The other that she was talking about that she was with a group of people that would have spent so much time getting physically prepped, their hair, their makeup, all kinds of things that her team really appreciated, and that was part of a culture she was part of, that they felt freed by being able to get on and not have to get camera ready. And I'm like,
Interesting.
never dawned on me. Look at me. And that's not something I'm worried about, right? I come with a
Yeah.
different sensibility and I'm an actor, but I come in different packaging. And so I love when my ideas that I think are cut and dry, like this has to happen. I'm like, oh, good point. I
Yeah.
hadn't, I
It's
hadn't even thought
interesting.
about that, right?
Yeah.
So there is a sense of us exploring. I'm going to stay on camera because I find it easier to connect with people when they're on camera. And I need to be aware of my filters, which then put a whole story on someone if they aren't on camera.
Yeah.
And you can go in and out. Hey, can we all come in, say hi to each other, and then go off camera again? That works. And if you're the only one on camera, it's okay to stay on camera and be the only one on camera as a leader. So the spacing,
And again, it
yeah.
continues to change. I mean, think about
Oh,
who, now Zoom is like Kleenex, right? I mean, it's
it,
kind of, right? I mean, it's
yes,
a word that's used so
yes,
differently than it did before the pandemic. So it's,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
interesting.
And even using our nameplates in a helpful way, right? You can put information in there. There are also great other programs like Ecamm that can bring other things in. And so there are so many choices now and options for making this work. The thing that I will say is that they have just done some studies. The science has come out that we have less brain activity. This is not encouraging. Less brain activity when we're on Zoom. So it's not just that it's harder to pay attention. Our brain function goes down.
That's
I'm like,
interesting.
right? The other
Yeah.
thing prior to that, I would always remind folks is that we're wired to that sense of with a human being that I feel them, right? So even meeting you and having just been in a room with you physically, right? I have a better sense of you here than the first time I met you only on Zoom because I hadn't been in a room with how you show up physically in a space, right? So when we're here, our mind is constantly trying to fill in for all of the information we're not receiving. I am only receiving the visual and some auditory. So the sense of how I take up space, I'm constantly filling in. So I am creating, like you had something happen, right? And you went over here. So my story, it goes into hyperdrive of create what happened, what's going on, even if you
Yeah.
explain some of it, because that's who we are as humans. If I'm in a space with you, I can be looking at someone else and still feel you over here because we're human beings. So to recognize that that is one of the exhausting factors is that our body is not getting, I'm getting my space, input from my space, which is not what my brain is computing that all of you are bringing into the space. So
Right.
that sense, and it's super awkward to know that there's a box that is me. I'm an actor, so I'm trained to look at myself, but none of us
Yeah.
are in a room with a camera showing what we look
Oh
like and
yeah.
hair
I
and
usually turn off the self
self.
view.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, right?
I don't like looking at myself. So
Yes, yeah, and that is a
yeah.
completely legitimate, it's a great tool and it's completely legitimate because I'm a little active. I
Yeah.
sometimes keep it on just to make sure I stay in the box.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, so
good. But
those are a
thank you.
few
It's an
things.
important
Yeah,
topic. That's great.
yeah,
So I want to be, are you good for another
yeah.
five,
What
ten
a
minutes? Okay, good.
yeah,
Because
you
there's
bet.
so many other topics I want to touch
Yeah.
on. Well, one I want to hit on, which is something that I hate, which is really public speaking.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm fine in small groups, but to be up on stage in front of hundreds of people just will
Yep.
keep me up for months before I know I have to do that.
Yeah.
So would love, any pearls of wisdom that you
Sure.
may share in terms of, your thoughts and how
Right.
to be effective as a public speaker, being on a panel, which is a little different. I think panels are much easier. Being interviewed is much easier, but when you're public speaking on your own, I
Yeah.
think that's really tough. But anything on any of those topics would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off to say to you, of course it's unnerving to do the public speaking because we want to make sure we're doing a good impression. You can tell me what the things are. We want to make sure we're coming across well. Everyone's going to be looking at us. Everybody's going to be quote unquote judging us. That's what we say. All those things are absolutely true. Absolutely. Everyone is judging us, what we're wearing, what we're saying, all of that. And to pretend that's not happening is ridiculous, right? So, for one, yes, it's unnerving. So, I want to say that. And then one of the key things to deal with that and to maneuver through, navigate that is to start focusing more on who you're speaking to than the fact that you are the central focus of it. So we have to understand that, of course, people are looking at us. If I'm more focused on the information I'm sharing, like right now, I'm more excited to share this information about public speaking and about communication. I'm drawn to that. I want to help with that. So I'm focused on you. I'm focused on the people we're speaking to. The minute I even I'm like, "Oh my goodness, my hair sticking up. Is this right? Am I like I then go to that place. Heart race, heart goes up, all of those nervous things happen.
Yeah.
So nerves, we're in the middle of the Olympics right now. So I know we're putting a timestamp on this, but we're in the middle of the Olympics right now, which means we are watching people dealing with nerves all the time. They aren't getting rid of nerves because that is a myth around public speaking. You don't want to get rid of nerves. You want to learn how to channel them, right? And how to use them because they show that you care. That's important. So if you are not nervous before you're going to public speak, I would be more concerned. Because if you are not nervous, then you've lost that sense of it matters what the message is, it matters how I come across, I matter, all of that. So it matters. In the
Yeah.
theater world, actors who've lost that sense of being nervous before a show, it's suggested they retire. It means they've lost that edge of caring enough. So we
Hmm.
want to have that. And then that sense of, yes, our body has lovely things that happen. We are mouth goes dry, our heart races, we have sweaty palms, we have sweaty whatever, right? All kinds of things that my nose runs. So I have a drippy nose when I get nervous. So I have finally learned, took me a long time to notice this. I had one of my colleagues pointed out, I finally now keep Kleenex nearby, right? It's like, okay, I have to have a tissue for that. So one is to manage your symptoms and make friends with them. So know that, oh, my heart's racing now. That means, okay, I'm getting ready and it matters for me. I can do to not necessarily get rid of that, it's for me to feel like I'm slightly in control of it, right? It's like, okay, I'm
How do
going
you
to
harness
exhale.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to exhale. I'm not going to inhale. One of the big things that people don't think about is to do something physical. So whatever it might be, running in place before you go on, doing push-ups. If you're backstage, that's easy. If you don't, if you're sitting at a table and then you have to go up on the platform, or you're sitting in a meeting and you now have to stand up and give a 30-second update, those are the most tricky ones, right? Because you don't have any place to prep in private before you get up. So if you're in private, if you do a physical thing like push-ups or push against a wall or anything that gets your heart rate up, your physical body gets back in control. The nerves have to go away because
You're
you're
releasing it. You're
yes.
releasing it. Interesting.
So if you can, when
Excuse me.
seated, do something physical, like clasp your hands tightly. So I'm clasped, kind of a yoga move, like it's a modified yoga move because you can't stand there and go like this, right? But you can push against the chair or push against your thigh or push against here. That helps get your breathing to drop down lower. So when we're nervous, our breathing gets shallow. So it only comes in a little bit. There are more blood vessels at the bottom of our lungs than the top of our lungs. So if we can breathe more deeply, we then get more oxygen into our bloodstream to go to our brain so that we can actually share our brilliant thoughts. So that also, that idea that I've lost my thoughts is, as I've mentioned to, I'm sure in the session, right, is more physiological than metaphorical. We actually are losing our thoughts, right? We're going into fight, flight, freeze, faint. So we're trying to override our physical body taking care of us. So what's happening, Margaret, is your body is saying, this is a ridiculous choice. This is not a smart choice, Margaret. Why are you getting up in front of people? Right. And you're like, right. So you are overriding that. One thing you can also say is, thank you for letting me know I'm terrified and this is going on, and I'm still going to do this. So there's also reframing it, saying, I'm going to go on whether I'm terrified or not. I'm going to go on. That's what we're doing here. It's not that life or death situation. It is, though, unnerving. So there is a reframing it that happens, and then the physical element as well. And if you can exhale, whew, here we go. I mean, you have to do things that don't, I keep picturing those two things. You seated at a table at a conference, right? And about to get up and speak. And like, you're like, whew, right? Can you do that? Right? You've got this, that kind of thing. And it's more acceptable almost with an athlete to go, okay, you got this, or, and I want that to be more acceptable. All right, here we go. How
Yeah.
can you cover that with some language that works? Along with someone who's at a boardroom table and giving a quick update around a circle. That's another place with, all right, what word can they use? All right, let me share some ideas. So if you have two quick phrases that get your breath going again, the oxygen will come in. Are those
Yeah.
helpful? Are those some helpful?
It's very helpful. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
And I want to be cognizant. You've been so generous with your time. I have like
I
five
love
more
this.
questions, but we're
Yeah.
not going to do it.
No,
I'm
okay, great.
going
No, I
to
just love it.
wrap up. I'd love for you in just a minute
Yeah.
share just with our listeners, how you work with individuals and
Yeah.
companies, and if someone wants to reach you, what's the best way to do that? So why don't we do that first, and then
Okay.
I'll
Thank you.
close. Yeah, thank
Thank you for
you.
that. Yes. So, three main ways. We work with, I'm a speaker, so I go out and I love doing presentations, short, that keynoting and breakout sessions and all of that. Short, I'll do short, long, whatever it is. And love sharing little bits in that. And then that sense of leading then to workshops. I love working with large groups or small groups, and we can do it virtually or in person. Either way works. And that sense of bringing tools, and then the magic is trying things on. That coaching, you witnessed that. That is the drama teacher reminder to you that I'm a drama teacher, right? Drama teacher put the drama in, now I take it out. But that sense of being able to hold someone in their awesomeness and invite them to try on something new, right? So no shaming, no making them feel horrible, but try this on, see if that even has you show up more. So that coaching is big. And then we do also a lot of one-on-one coaching, and we have, and we're all performers. So the whole team of us are performing artists. So some in music, some in theater. So we're bringing that vision and that sensibility. So speaking, training, and coaching. Yeah.
Well, and we during our workshop, experienced a little bit of each of those, and I think you'd be a fabulous one-to-one coach.
I
So
I love it.
thank you
Thank you.
for that,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for being here.
Love
One
it.
thing I just want to leave with is the idea, and it also comes from your book, in terms of ways that we show up communicating, and just the idea of it's really about connection
Yes.
over perfection.
Yes.
And, again, some of the things we talked about on the awkwardness, it doesn't matter, that authenticity, that's what matters.
Yeah.
It's really showing that you're showing up, and whether it's perfect or not, it just doesn't matter. So I'm gonna
Yes.
leave on that note.
Yay. I love that. Thank you.
Um,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us today. This is the stuff that growth is made of.
Awesome.
Thank you, Hilary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.